just to make sure it's great. Can you also see that it's recording? It shows on mine, just to double check.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So let me share my slides. And then here we go. Okay, I will remove the slides whenever I'm ready with all the talking about the opportunities, and then we will just have our faces on the screen. All right, I'm letting everyone in. Are you ready?
Yes.
Hello and welcome everyone to this final episode of the Gather Talks of 2020. I'm extremely excited for today's episode as well. I'm usually excited for all the episodes, but today it's a full-on JA panel. And finally, I can also ask all the questions in public to Asheesh and Simi, which I can also ask personally. But now we have the proof because we're recording this Gather Talk. And I hope you brought all your questions about their incredible careers, their leadership at JA. You can get a peek behind the curtain on how it is to be a leader at JA. And especially also we're talking about Harvard because everyone is very excited to hear the stories from both of them. But before we jump in, please, if you're on the call, I'm also admitting the people into the call right now. Please use the hashtag GatherTalks and share it on our social channels. So take the usual picture of the screen, which we have since the pandemic, of all the beautiful faces, and share it on social media so everybody can see that we're in the call. If someone of you did not hear about Gather, I would be shocked, but I'll just prepare the slide anyway. So Gather is our alumni platform, and we're still gathering you guys, so the people. We're gathering ideas and we're gathering opportunities. And I'm not sure if all of you know, but we actually also have an app. So on the side of the screen, you can see, just download the app in your App Store or in the Google Play Store. It's called Gather Alumni, and there we can connect with everyone. Asheesh is also there, Simi's there, and also a lot of other JA staff members. One more very cool thing, which is actually starting today, so watch out, we will post it on our social channels today. We are starting Gather Business. What does it mean? We have such incredible entrepreneurs out there, and Asheesh always tells us, if all us alumni create 5 jobs in the world, we won't have that many problems anymore. So what we want to do is we want to gather all the alumni-owned businesses. So if you have one, or if you know someone who is a JA alum, please send them together. We will have a marketplace. You can showcase your business. You can collaborate with others. And today is the kickoff of our Gather Business Network. And last but not least, until we jump in our call, we have an amazing opportunity, which is called the Global Business Hall of Fame. And I want to ask Asheesh to tell a bit more about what the Global Business Hall of Fame is and how you guys can participate in it.
Well, thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Simi, for joining this call. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. The Global Business Hall of Fame builds on our history at JA with kind of having a Hall of Fame to recognize individuals who are role models for young people. And as business has become global, we've also globalized the Hall of Fame to recognize role models who are business leaders that can actually inspire young people around the world to recognize that no matter where they're from, they can achieve business success. So we have a nomination process, a very inclusive process with a voting jury that's all over the world. And JA teams around the world as well are involved in the selection and vetting process to make sure we've got some amazing role models. So I'd encourage you to go to businesshalloffame.org, and the deadline is in mid-January. So please go there soon and nominate people who you believe are role models, both who are young innovators and also leaders. Recently, we honored leaders from Bulgaria, from Qatar, from Lebanon, and from Zimbabwe. So we really are identifying global leader role models for young people. It's very exciting.
Thanks, Asheesh. And I'm not sure if I actually have to introduce the people on the panel. However, I put the slide up in case someone doesn't know. As I said, today we're talking about Harvard careers and leadership at JA. So you already most probably met Asheesh. So he's our president and CEO of JA Worldwide, and Simi, who was the JA Nigeria CEO and is now the CEO of JA Africa. So we are very excited to keep her in the JA family. Welcome to the panel, and I would love, maybe Simi, can you start in introducing who you are? Just give a brief story about how you came to JA. I know it's a long one. Tell them where you're coming from and who you are.
I am muted. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Sarah and Asheesh, for having me here. Until recently was the executive director of JA Nigeria, which I helped bring to Nigeria after volunteering JA New York for 2 years, donkey years ago. And set it up in Nigeria, ran it for 3 years, and then went back to business school at Harvard. Worked for a little bit in the US, and then came back to Nigeria and joined the board here. Was with the board about 14 years, and then came back into the executive director role and ran it for the last 4 years before I joined JA Africa. So that is my JA story.
Thanks, Simi. So Asheesh, tell us your JA story. I know it's also a long one.
Well, I'll keep it brief because I know we've got other things to talk about, and many of the people have heard this already. But I'll just say that I went through JA when I was a kid. I moved from India to Canada, and for me, going through JA was a chance to sort of think of myself as an entrepreneur, which when it happens in your teens really makes a big difference in your mindset, because it starts to make you realize what's possible, and it changes the way you think about yourself. So as I'm sure many of the people who work at JA and many people who are associated with JA on this call know, it's so powerful when you go through JA at that stage of your life. Almost regardless of which program you go through, we have so many different programs that allow you to sort of think of yourself differently. That's why I'm so delighted that I've had the opportunity now to lead JA for the last 5 years, and sort of do my best to bring sort of an entrepreneurial mindset to the organization. And I will say I've been failing at every turn trying to do this, but I've been trying my best anyway.
I mean, don't believe him. It's not true. He has to say, no, just kidding. And I think so this talk is specifically targeted to careers, because on Gather, we focus on careers, because unfortunately during this global pandemic, a lot of people have to rethink their career, either because they feel, oh, maybe this is not what I want to do, or because they lost their jobs. And we felt like career is a topic which helps and can help a lot of people across the world. So what we really want to learn today from you is, how did you start your career? So we're going to jump back in, let's say, after high school. How did you choose, what you want to study? I feel like this is a question everybody's always asking, like, what shall I study and where? So Asheesh, do you want to go ahead first?
Well, I guess I'll start saying by, after high school, I thought I knew what I wanted, but in retrospect, I didn't know that life is about having multiple careers, right? So when you finish high school, you sort of, at least in those days, I thought the choice I make at that stage of my life is going to be what I do for the rest of my life. So I felt I needed to get a little bit of experimentation experience before I decided that. And I knew I was going to go to university and graduate school. So I felt I had a period of time where I could experiment. So I did all sorts of different jobs. I worked for a law firm in the mailroom. I worked for a fashion magazine, believe it or not. There's a good story around that. I didn't think I was ever going to be, you can tell I've got no fashion sense at all. But I did think that publishing might be something I'd be interested in. And the only people who'd hire me was a fashion magazine. So I ended up working for a women's fashion magazine. And I worked for an investment bank. I worked for a consulting firm, and I worked for the UN briefly as a volunteer, and I worked at the World Bank for a summer. So all these different experiences, I think, helped me understand who I am and understand what I wanted to be. But what I didn't know, and I don't think even young people now know, is you're going to have multiple careers and multiple jobs. So it's not about choosing that first one and thinking that's going to be what you do for the rest of your life. It's about building skills and competencies and having a mindset that allows you to be agile and flexible, all the stuff we teach at JA. So I can tell you stories about each of those things, but I want to turn to Simi. I'm sure her story is more interesting.
Well, it's very similar to yours, except that, you know, when you're growing up in Nigeria and you have any sort of, if you're seen as smart, anyway, when I was young, there were really only three careers for you: a lawyer, doctor, and engineer. And if you're a woman, it's lawyer and doctor. They didn't even think women were smart enough to be engineers. And so growing up, I was told, oh, you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor someday because you're so smart. And so I went into college thinking that. And I moved to the US for college and quickly found out that I didn't like medicine. And, you know, I would have to be pre-med, I would have to take all these science classes that I didn't want to take. So I said, okay, then it's law. And I did some internships at law firms and decided very quickly that law wasn't for me either. So I was kind of lost for a while and did a lot of internships to figure it out. And it was in my junior year that I was placed at a consulting firm that I realized that I was good at something called strategy, which I'd never even really thought about, and that business had a responsibility to the community, which I never also learned about in Nigeria. And so I got interested in business and I got interested in social enterprise. And it wasn't until I graduated and went and worked in an investment bank because I wanted to know more about businesses across different industries. And I felt like it was either consulting or banking that would give me that perspective. And it was while there that I started. I was at Goldman Sachs, which was a huge sponsor of junior achievement in New York. And so I started volunteering for JA, and I realized, wow, if I had had something like this when I was in high school in Nigeria, or even in elementary school in Nigeria, I would have known sooner what business was about, what entrepreneurship was about, what social enterprise was. And I got really intrigued by it and had a couple of conversations and was led to Junior Achievement International then, that was before Worldwide, and decided to bring it to Nigeria. So I would give the young people the benefit that I didn't have when I was growing up. And so that led to my, long career in JA, but so it was supposed to be 1 year, bring it to Nigeria and go back to business school. I ended up doing it for 3 years because I loved it. And the boyfriend I left in New York proposed to get me to move back to New York. And so then I decided, okay, what am I going to do? I've, had this taste of business. I want more. And so applied to business school, got into Harvard and did that for 2 years. And then out of Harvard, went and worked, because I'd also really romanticized the entertainment business for a while. So I went to work for an entertainment company, Viacom, in their Nickelodeon unit, and really enjoyed developing things for children, but missed the aspect of social development and knew that I wanted to go back into developing people. And so really, again, was trying to figure out how to do that. And Nickelodeon got me a coach. And it was while getting coached, I fell in love with coaching. And so I went back to school to NYU to get a coaching certificate and started a coaching business, HOD Consulting, which I then ran for the next, 10 years while being a board member at JA in Nigeria, and giving back in my own little way, doing my entrepreneurship and also doing JA as a board member. And it wasn't until we moved back to Nigeria after a couple of years and we were expanding the strategy in Nigeria that the board asked me to come back into the ED role at JA. It was supposed to be a 6-month assignment, and then I would go back to HOD Consulting, but then it turned into 4 years, and then 4 years turned into JA Africa. So so that's how I've sort of meandered in and out of JA, but also keeping a social enterprise and entrepreneurship connection through the way. And what I really love about programs like JA is we give young people the opportunity to look at different businesses, look at different careers, expose them to different things that I didn't have when I was growing up. So I really love that.
I mean, everybody now knows why we invited you two, because we can talk for like 15 hours because we want to know all the details. You know, you just said like, well, and then I got into Harvard. I feel like that's the first question everyone asks. How did you get into Harvard? Because that's kind of like, you know, the giant school everyone wants to go to. So can you share, Simi, a little bit on like, how was the actual application process? How hard is it to get in? And is it actually that hard, you know, when you are in Harvard? I feel like, you know, this is like the one-time chance we can ask someone we know who went through it.
I don't think it's that hard. The problem is that there is limited spaces, right? So the year that I went in was the year right after 9/11, and they had, I think they told us they had 3 times, as you know, they could comfortably accept 3 times the number that they could accept, because there were so many people who were qualified, who had, you know, maybe lost their jobs because of 9/11 or the recession and stuff. And so they get a lot of qualified applications, and it's sometimes a luck of the draw, because you know, they do have so many. I do wish there were more people. And I think with the situation now with COVID, there are a few more opportunities to go to Harvard online, you know, HLX and all of that. But it wasn't, for me, for my personal experience, it was really just talking about my vision. And anyone that is applying to any business school, I would say you really want a school that can support the vision that you have for your career. And so when you are applying in your essays, the essays are really the most critical part. You really want to outline who you are and what your vision is. And if it ties into what the school's vision is for their students, you will get in. And if you don't get in, don't see it as a failure, see it as there wasn't a match between my vision and the school. And so for me, when I applied, I really told them that this is, you know, basically what I've just told you about discovering the responsibility of business to society, and that my vision is to really marry social enterprise, to marry the business world and the entrepreneurial and development world together. I saw that my goal was to go back to Nigeria and teach the businesses in Nigeria the responsibility of business. And that really ties into what Harvard is about, you know, creating leaders who want to create a change in their world. And I think that's why I got in. It wasn't necessarily because I had the best, you know, grade point averages or any. Of course, it helps if you have, you know, high GPAs and you're very smart. But I would say really be clear on who you are and what your vision is. And if it ties to the school. I remember while we were at Goldman, the admissions director from Stanford Business School came to speak to us. And she said, when you write your essay, it should be so personal that only you and the admissions director can read it. You know, like it should really say who you are and what your aspirations are. And I would say that for any school, really that's really what you want to do, to portray, this is my goal, and the school that really supports that goal will take you.
This is so great. Yeah, I was just about to, Asheesh was like nodding all the time. I think this is incredible advice, and I think you can use it for so many different things, even applying for a job, right? Just thinking of my job now, I think, you know, I was just so passionate about alumni all the time and just working towards it. And that's how kind of people saw that, hey, this could be something we could take globally, and maybe you could be the right person for it because you're so passionate about it. And, you know, I feel like I could write all the essays. YJA is incredible. So Asheesh, you nodded. What would be your advice on like how to get into like university?
Sarah's asking it that generally because she knows I didn't get into Harvard. So she was very politely asking some general advice for getting into universities. So I'll just say that the idea of being authentic in your essays for college applications, absolutely, that is great advice to me. And as Sarah did, applying that to jobs is the same. there's a great phrase about, or I guess point of advice about getting promotions, which is when you start acting and behaving like you already have the job, people will just give it to you. And that is so true, even if you're applying for a job, to the extent that you can communicate that you've already been doing the work, it really makes a big difference. And I think Sarah certainly did that with her passion for alumni. I'll tell you a story that might be more interesting for those listening, which is there was a young JA kid in high school in Canada who attended one of the JA Canada events. I believe it was in Calgary. And I remember going to the event, and they had many speakers. I was one of the speakers to inspire kids with stories about their own personal life. And I talked about how my brother got into Harvard from Canada, and how I also, when I saw his example, I realized, geez, I should also look at going to some fancy schools in the United States. And how just the idea of knowing that somebody else could do it could change my own behavior and thinking about myself. And this young woman in the room had never thought of applying to Harvard. And she ended up applying to Harvard and getting in, and then writing me this wonderful note saying, geez, thank you for coming and speaking, because it sort of sparked an idea in my mind that I could too. And it is such the perfect story, particularly because the theme that Sarah picked of Harvard and careers for this talk, because it's so valuable, I think, the work that JA does in connecting young people with not only role models, but others who've even achieved some degree of success or some degree of rule breaking or barrier breaking, because it does show them that it's possible. So I wanted to share that story because I thought people would find it interesting.
Thanks for sharing this. And I think this is exactly what Jay is about, to kind of inspire the other person to just try. And if you fail, well, that's fine. You just try over and over again. And so I think you just mentioned all your incredible careers. And I find it so inspiring, honestly, because when I grew up, I always felt like I was always looking to people who had like the job for 150 years kind of, right? And I felt like, I'm not sure if this is for me. Even in my family, everybody is in the same job as, they started in this job and they're still in this job, and nobody could understand why I studied this. And then I went here, and then I left the country, and then now I'm in a different country, and now I'm with JA. Nobody can understand what JA is in my family because it's all English. So they never really understood it. But I think what they now understand is that this is something which makes me happy, right? To just try out different things, have multiple passions. So I'm really excited, to hear that it's not only me, but, the most inspiring people within our JA organization did the exact same thing. And what I want to ask you is, what was the most exciting job out of all your job experiences? Maybe Simi, do you want to start?
Well, the most exciting job, I think it's not to be biased. I think it's JA because I intended to do it for 1 year, and I ended up doing it for 3. Well, now 21. And I think it's because it perfectly marries, my values, my motivations with the fact that it gives me a paycheck. So because you could be passionate about something and not make any money at it, but you are following your passion, or you could be earning a paycheck and then find something on the side that is the source of your passion, because the paycheck is just something you dread. And I've been able to actually earn a paycheck doing something that I love and I'm passionate about. I think that for every job that I've had, I've done it because I love it and I'm passionate about it. And it's, for me, never been about the paycheck. So even when I was at Nickelodeon, I was also newly married and pregnant. Well, I'd been married 2 years, but newly pregnant. And so was thinking about family and children and creating the kind of shows that I wanted my kids to watch. And so for the 2 years that I was there, it was very relevant to the stage of life that I was in. And even with HOD consulting, it was relevant to the stage of life that I was in, because we were coaching women who had MBAs from top business schools but wanted to step out of the fast track to have children. And, so we were at different, every job I've had has related to, something that I'm passionate about or a life stage that and I think Asheesh used the word authentic. I think anything that you do, your career, the world that we live in now, it has to be authentically you. It has to be, we've gone past the stage of our parents where basically they had a 9 to 5 to feed the family, and then maybe on the weekends they did the things that they love to do. The world that we're in now, where you have people who, I love to travel and take photos. And so now you can have a job that pays you a lot of money to travel and take photos. I mean, that didn't exist in my parents' generation. And so I really think that careers now, there are a lot of opportunities to do what you love, do it, well, and earn money doing it. Asheesh, what do you think? What is the job that?
I'm going to not say JA, even though it is the right answer, just because it'll be saying the same thing Simi said. So please call this the second most important job I've ever had, or second most enjoyable job ever. So I'll talk a little bit about my time being an entrepreneur, because I think it might interest some of the listeners. One piece of advice I'd share is don't build up your cost structure and your personal expenses and your personal burn rate to such a high amount of money that it doesn't give you the flexibility to do the things you love. In other words, once you start to spend money on lots of fancy things and take up a big mortgage and create lots of cost, you are limiting your choices to only jobs that pay that much to enable you to have those comforts. And I think the luxury of being a young entrepreneur is you don't have those costs. So you can actually do pretty creative things because you don't have to necessarily support your high cost of living. And I had the privilege of being able to start a company in my late 20s where I had a very low cost structure. So I was able to get lots of people to work with me who all were either the same age or also didn't have a high cost structure. And we all could collaborate on building something. And it's so fulfilling to build something with a team, particularly something that you think is actually making the world better or changing an industry for the better. And in our case, we did that in financial services, and it was very fulfilling to sort of watch it grow. And then when the company got acquired, I had a chance to work for Richard Branson, which was such an incredible education. It was a crazy time in the American economy. The financial crisis had just happened, and all financial services companies were under a lot of stress and strain. So I saw how people behave when they're under stress and strain. And just that learning experience for me, in retrospect, was very, very fulfilling, even though I wouldn't call it enjoyable at the time because people were going through some very difficult times, but it was educational. And seeing how Richard Branson dealt with it was also quite valuable for me to learn from.
Oh, totally. You already, answered the second question I would have to you, Asheesh, is kind of, if you could choose right now, would you go back to the full-on entrepreneur world, being an entrepreneur, or would you stay in the NGO entrepreneurship world as you are in right now?
Well, the interesting thing is I don't see them as black and white, maybe as the question might cast them as being, because I think JA, for example, just to talk about one NGO, is really a network of entrepreneurs, right? It's a network of teams, which are all between 5 people and 50 people in size. And so we really are a collection of these amazing teams who really are trying their best to do good for the world. And that's what the entrepreneurship ecosystem really is. So when I even compare us to Virgin, which I would say is also a whole bunch of Virgin branded companies all around the world run by incredibly entrepreneurial leaders. And some of them, of course, are much bigger than Jay, but some of them are also small. I see working for an NGO as a manifestation, frankly, of leveraging the best of entrepreneurship, as opposed to creating hierarchy and structure like a lot of large organizations have.
I love that answer. Simi, I see you nodding. So if you could choose right now to do your career all over again, would you choose the same path on like testing out a lot of things, trying it here? And I would love what you said actually also to make it relevant to where you're at, right? So for instance, I started in the sports industry because I was such a passionate gymnast when I grew up. So for me, it was clear that I will always and ever only work with gymnastics in my entire life. I mean, that already changed for me. My career is not as advanced as yours is. So it would be interesting if you would choose the same path, if you could do that.
I wouldn't change anything, is my short answer. I think that, I probably would have experimented more, in college with other things, just given, what I see now in terms of innovation with young people that I work with in JA. But I don't think that there is one path. I think you can be an entrepreneur and in a nonprofit. I think you can be an entrepreneur who starts a business, and through your business you fund nonprofits, or you sit on boards. I think the way the world is now, you can have multiple careers even at the same time, just because there's technology that enables you to be more productive and efficient in different ways. So for myself, I think I would probably explore more the entertainment side. There's always been, or the writing side, there's always been this itch to write. And I think I will still go into it in my retirement years, where I will write. I do want to write novels for young ladies, for teenage women and above. So there is this connection to always wanting to support young people. And I think that the next thread would be to figure out how to support young girls in Africa. And I think it might be through writing. And I think that will still come at some point. I wish that I had done it younger. That's the only thing that, because now the what it would require is a lot more out of me in terms of time and effort and thinking and relating. I think if I were younger, I would probably be able to relate better with them. But I still intend to do that. So it's not a regret. It's just that, I will still do that. But I wouldn't change anything else in terms of my career and decisions.
Asheesh, anything you would like to change if you could from the past, or all good?
So how long do we have? I want to just check. If we have another hour, I can go through all of them for you if you'd like.
Just the top few you would change.
The top two things. Caroline Jenner asked a question in the chat about why do people from business backgrounds transition to nonprofit work? And I think part of the reason for that is making sure you find meaning in everything you do. You heard Simi talk about her search for meaning and all the things that give her meaning. I think in my life, because I've been an entrepreneur, I've been able to find meaning because I've been creating it in organizations that I've either been running or have founded. And I feel that there are, for example, social enterprises that you can create when you're young. And I had a chance to both be a founding board chair of a nonprofit and also be the founder of a for-profit. And doing both together gave me an incredible amount of meaning and satisfaction. And you could see the impact. So every day when you come to work, you could actually see at the end of the day how much impact you had, in a way that, for example, when I worked in consulting, I didn't have that benefit, right? When I worked in consulting, I saw how we were preparing data to create slides to influence the behavior of a large organization. But we had no idea after we presented it if the recommendations were used, and we moved on to another project. So that connection between your work and the meaning you get was not as direct. So, however, I don't think I could have had as much success as an entrepreneur if I hadn't gone through that time working in consulting and maybe even in investment banking as Simi did. So is it a regret? I don't think it's a regret, but I think the advice I'd give young people is you get so much more out of yourself when you pick jobs which leverage the meaning and purpose that you want to bring to what you want to share with the world. And to do it in a way that allows you to understand yourself and your skills makes such a difference. So Caroline talked about why do people with business backgrounds switch to nonprofit work? Well, in my case, it's because I realized, heck, I really actually love interacting with people, and I'm good at fundraising, as I had to do with my for-profit startups. How can I use that in a way that gives more impact in the world and give me more meaning? Well, nonprofit work is a vehicle for doing that. But I keep coming back to the fact the difference between nonprofit and business is not that stark, right? So J could be structured as a for-profit and still make a big difference in the world. And my previous organizations could have been structured as nonprofits and provided meaningful. It's just a different business model in terms of the impact that you're making. And I think the world is moving in that direction. There's a big gray area now between for-profit and nonprofit. And my hypothesis is most people listening in who are young people to this are going to work in both fields at some point in their life. If the average young person is going to have 20 jobs and 7 careers at least, it's a decent chance you're going to probably switch between nonprofit and for-profit and B Corps and social enterprise a few times in your life.
Yeah, thanks for picking up the first question. There are more questions coming in, so please type them all in the chat. I'm gonna read them out, and then Simi or Asheesh, you can go ahead and jump in and answer them. So the next question is, a lot of people have weaknesses in whatever job they do. So what would your advice be to get around that weakness to increase the success in productivity of work hours? Whoever wants to.
You're on mute, Simi. Yeah.
So I actually just answered this question at another chat that I was at before the call, before this one. I really believe in structure. I believe in going and working within a structured environment before you go into entrepreneurship. Of course, many people just go straight into entrepreneurship and they're successful, and that's great. But what a structured environment helps you with is identifying those weaknesses and helping you to improve on them. And what do I mean by a structured environment? An environment where you're able to get appraisals, you're able to have mentors. Asheesh spoke about working under Richard Branson and learning a lot from him. At Goldman, I tell people I only worked there for 2 years, but what I learned there, I still use today. Because it was a very structured environment. It was, you were expected to perform at your very best, and you had coaching, you had mentoring, you had appraisals, you had everyone checking on you. So yes, everyone has weaknesses, but you want to make sure you're working in an environment that helps you to identify those weaknesses and helps you to strengthen them. That's one answer. And then the other answer is also to focus on your strengths. So we tend to focus a lot on, oh, this is my weakness and I want to improve on my weakness. But, sometimes it's also good to know your strength and focus on your strength and gain reputation as the person who, you need somebody to do a discounted cash flow sheet for you. You go to Simi, she can do, So by focusing on your strength, you actually get a lot more done in terms of a lot more responsibility is shared with you, and you sort of start growing in other areas as well, because once you start getting more responsibility, the weaknesses will also start getting strengthened as you go. So don't just focus on, this is my weakness, I want to improve my weakness, but also focus on your strength, get recognized for your strength, as you move up in the organization, because you're being recognized for your strength, you will get the mentorship you need to build on the weaknesses to round out your capabilities. Asheesh, you want to answer that?
I agree completely. I'll just say one more thing, which is pick just one weakness. Don't obsess yourself with the 10. Pick just one, and then tell everyone publicly, okay, that you're actually going to work on it. It's amazing how that little behavioral twist, that nudge, will actually have you focus on the one thing. In my case, I'll be very public about my weakness. So we did a 360 for me when I first joined, or maybe after a year or two. And the thing that on the lowest scale, right, on 20 characteristics, the thing was at the bottom was cultivating individual talents. So I was working so fast and so hard and moving my quote entrepreneurial direction. I'd forgotten that, one way to bring people along is to focus on their careers, because what they're focused on to some degree is their own careers. So I was really far down on that scale. So then I sort of went to the team and said, that's what I'm going to focus on. And I sent an email to the whole senior leadership team and said, that's the one thing I'm going to work on. And so we worked on specifically allowing everyone, if they wanted, to have a coach so they could come up with what their own career goals were, so I could support those career goals. And I don't want to be public about whose career goals I supported, but it really did work, I would say, in getting more buy-in for our strategy to be public about my weakness. So I've done that again a couple of years later, and if we have time, I can share my second weakness. But my point is, it really does work to be public about one weakness and focus on just solving one thing.
Thanks for sharing. And we have another question. So Asheesh, if we still have time, we would of course love to hear your second weakness, right? So the question is, I am who I am today because of JA, South Africa. Created my company at the age of 19. My company has impacted more than 87,000 people in and outside South Africa since 2014. I mean, it's not a question, but I think these are the things which, you know, I can see all our faces are like, yeah, this is why we do the work, right? And this is why we love what we do and we love JA. Okay, there's one more question. Or Asheesh, you want to?
I mean, I see. Is it Pulang? Is that how I pronounce your name, Pulang? I see him here. You know, we're just so thankful that he's come to be part of this conversation, and the fact that he got so much out of JA is just so heartening. You know, I'm sure Simi feels the same. I mean, this is why we do what we do. So thank you for joining. And if you have a question, put it in the chat.
All right, so we have one more question. It's a long one. This is really great, engaging dialogue. Thank you, Asheesh, Simi, and sharing, and Sarah for hosting. You're welcome. We're happy to have you. I'd like to hear more of your thoughts on purpose-driven careers, especially what are you doing now to ensure that your purpose is still aligned with what you do? Is it a gut check-in, or are there processes that you go through to reevaluate alignment with your purpose? Very important question.
So I had to go through this recently, so I can give some insight. So like I mentioned, I was supposed to be in the JA Nigeria role for 6 months, and then it ended up being 4 years. And at the end of those 4 years, because we had a strategy to reach 1 million by 2020. And so by the time we did that, I felt like, okay, now it's time for me to move on. And I had to think about what it is that I would move on to. And I did interview with several different organizations in addition to JA. And I ended up accepting to move to the JA Africa role because I felt like, yes, while my work with Nigeria was done, quote unquote, I still had the opportunity to continue meeting the social development goals. So really what I had said was I was going to go off and write books and do things across Africa. But then I figured that my purpose was really to develop these young people to recognize their potential. And while writing books would be great for them to read and get motivated, JA really offered a hands-on way to do that in a way that would still be aligned to my purpose and would still be using things that I had learned while doing JA Nigeria to now expand that across Africa. And I had to do a lot of soul searching because I felt that at one point, do I really not just want to go back to entrepreneurship? I have my peers from Harvard Business School making all this money, and they were, now big managing directors and making significant, really, and I had to come back to who I was and what motivated me and what yes, an increase in pay would be great because my kids are in high school in the US. I need to pay their fees, but at the same time, I had to do something that I was really passionate about. It was aligned to my purpose. So you do have to keep checking on that are you still aligned to who you say you want to be. I don't have a, by 80 years old, I want to have done this, and I don't really have that because I've found that every time I plan those things, it never really comes out the way that I plan because something more interesting comes along and I take it. But I do know that, my values, what my values have been from a very young age, grow people. either through coaching or through JA or through, entrepreneurship. Even when I was an entrepreneur, it was really around coaching people to be the best that they can be. And so again, I just go back to that to say, how am I living those values?
I'd give some advice to people listening, which is to Google this article. I was looking for it as I was listening to Simi. It's an Atlantic magazine article called How to Really Find Your Passion. That's the article. How to Really Find Your Passion. It's a free article, you can get it. And the reason I love the article so much is it says that your purpose and your passion, it's not something you just find. It's something you have to work on discovering. And there's a nuance to that, because we keep telling young people, go find your passion. It'll come to you one day magically, like manna from heaven, and you will discover what you will do in life. And that's really not how it works, right? You end up having to work at building skills, and you actually build interests. And I guarantee, Simi, in your job as CEO of JA Nigeria, you discovered new passions and new interests, and you will do the same when you're running JA Africa. There'll be new opportunities, right? And the nice thing is to not box yourself in and say, hey, this is only the one thing I'm going to do for the rest of my life in terms of one change I'm going to make in the world. Because what ends up happening is, even when you do that, new things get discovered along the way. And at least from my perspective, it really does, the flexibility of being able to discover new passions and purposes along the way actually enhance outcomes. Bizarrely, not having a plan is more valuable than having a plan. It's exactly why people don't teach business planning in the same way that they used to, because we live in a world where things are changing so fast and there's so much uncertainty that it's better to be agile and focus on your strengths and your core of who you want to be than the change you want to make in the world. Because the change you want to make in the world will change over time, because what the world needs will change over time. So I know that sounds somewhat controversial. It probably is for some people, but that's what I've discovered, at least in my career.
What was it, Atlantic?
Atlantic Magazine, How to Really Find Your Passion. It's a Stanford University professor named Greg Walton, who worked with Carol Dweck, who's the growth mindset specialist, to come up with sort of this framework. Very valuable.
We will post it afterwards on Gather, obviously, so you can check it out there. So it's not a question, it's actually from Arosa. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Proud to be part of JA, the actual platform where you can enjoy, learn, and grow. So, well, I mean, I feel like, this is the end of year episode, and there is so much, energy and passion for JA in this room. I think this is kind of like the perfect ending of the year. So we still have some minutes left. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. I'm sure Asheesh and Simi are happy to answer all the questions. But also, if there are no questions, I'm sure everyone enjoys another 10-minute back in their day to just breathe, because nobody wants to be on another Zoom call, right? So let's give everyone 2 more minutes to ask some. Oh, Simi, do you want to say something?
I got a text from a friend who said you promised to talk about how you did have a case study and you haven't yet. So I guess they're on the call.
There you go. That's the question. Please start.
And so I'll just say a little bit about that, and then maybe Asheesh can talk about his. So it was really at a time that I was in the middle of coaching women who had come off the fast track because they were having children, and they were having this crisis about, always being a super high achiever and also wanting to be a super high achieving mom, and trying to get both, aligned, ambition and family. And for me and my partner, we were both at the same crossroads. And so we decided to start what was called the Two Hats Network, which was really to form a network of supportive, high achieving women who were becoming moms, some of whom wanted to step off the fast track, some just wanted to ramp down, and how do we coach them to continue to achieve that. And so there was a professor at Harvard, Myra Hart, who who was teaching this program called Women Building Business. And so she decided to change it to building a business in the context of a life and look at entrepreneurs who were trying to marry entrepreneurship and family and ambition. And so they said, can we just follow you around for 6 months with a video camera just to see how you do this, since you're living it and you're also coaching women to do it. And it was a bit unnerving because I had 2 young babies and I was trying to figure life out, but I said, sure. And they did. And what, it was instructive to me because now I was living with a camera following me around and I had to make, some sense out of my life. And at the same time, my husband had just, received an offer to move back to Nigeria. And so we were, actually in the throes of deciding, I'm starting a business. We just started, our family. Is this really the time to be moving to Nigeria? What would I do in Nigeria? So it was a really complex time in my life. And having the camera following me around also offered the opportunity to live my values in public. And so if, in terms of how to get Harvard to write a case on you, I don't know the answer to that, but it was really because they saw again that I was living what I was preaching, basically, and they wanted to see how I was doing that, coaching women to be high achieving at work and also to raise children and marry the two. And hopefully I did a good job. I don't know. You can, get the case and watch it and be the judge of that. But it was a really interesting time for me. Asheesh, how did you get someone to write a case?
I'll just say that Simi spoke at a class that I'm teaching on Wednesday evenings in entrepreneurship, and all the young people were so inspired by her story and her Harvard case. They all want to talk to her, just like Pulang puts in the chat that he has a question for Simi as well about what he wants to do in Africa. So Simi, you're just such an inspiration. I'm so glad the Harvard case was written about you because it tells your story so well. In my case, there are 2 cases written. One was about the business, one was about me. The one about the business was written mainly to talk about strategy and some choices that we had to make to grow. And it's taught in classes which are really about strategy. And the second one was written a bit like Simi's for a course at Harvard called Building a Business in the Course of a Life, BBCL, where they talk about personal choices that you make. And that case actually is one about both my wife and I and the choices we make together, which involved at times some sacrifices for each other, mainly her for me, frankly, and about what that really means for a partnership when you're making life choices. So really valuable teaching instruments. And like anything in life, they sort of happen through networking and through just somebody calling you randomly someday and you're saying yes as opposed to no, right? It's a good life lesson. Just say yes as opposed to no. But in our short time that we have left, I want to make sure Simi gives advice to Pulang as well.
Let me read what he said here. Is it possible for you to assist my please change lives and influence? Of course, let's talk about it. We can, should I post my email here? So you can email me and we can talk about it.
All right, so we have a few questions. Let's start with the first one and see how time goes. So the question is, what should I be doing to improve my career prospects?
Wow, that's a broad question. I mean, not knowing too much about the person, I guess the general advice I would share on, how to improve your career prospects is to focus on knowing your strengths and networking, right? Those are the 2 places to start. I do think networking will matter so much more in the future than it has in the past. If you haven't already got your LinkedIn profile up, and if you haven't already started to think of all the social platforms that allow you to connect with people and then hopefully connect with them on Zoom and in person after that, you should really invest the time to do that.
I agree. I think it's, knowing your strengths, like we said earlier, and getting sponsors, especially, I don't know if it's a woman that asked the question, I think it's a guy, you know, ensuring that you have within your company who can speak about you when decisions are being made, and you get those sponsors by working closely with them and displaying your strengths, and so they can talk about you in rooms where promotions are made and bonuses decisions are made. They can say, yes, I've worked with Okechukwu and I know what he's capable of or what she's capable of. Workplace disappointment. I mean, there is disappointment everywhere, workplace, outside the workplace. It's really, how do you handle disappointment? And really the way to handle disappointment is to figure out how you learn what you want to learn from it. Just make sure that, you're able to have an objective conversation with yourself of, where did I go wrong? What could I have done better so that I wouldn't have had this disappointment? If it's maybe a promotion that you wanted that you didn't get, what could I do better so that next time I get it? And ask people for feedback. A lot of the times we don't want to hear negative feedback. You need to be able to, see it as constructive feedback. Go to your boss and said, I really expected that promotion. Can you tell me why I didn't get it? Or whatever it is that's causing the disappointment. Speak to whoever disappointed you and learn from it so that next time you know what to do.
So we've got, what are your tips for being more self-motivated and self-driven? Well, the fact that this guy is asking the question, I think it's Abhi, right? So Abhi, I'm assuming that it's a guy, not a girl, because I think Abhi goes both ways in India. But Abhi, the fact that you're asking this question leads me to believe you're already self-motivated and self-driven, right? Now the question is, how do you be more self-motivated and self-driven? Now that's a really interesting question, because people who already have some natural insight into caring about self-improvement and personal development, how do they nurture that and not lose it? And how do they not take it to the extent that they look at all their failures and all their weaknesses? That's, I think, the real trick. And there's some amazing books which have been written on this topic. So if you're so self-motivated and self-driven that you are willing to ask this question, my hypothesis is you'd be okay with reading some personal development books. And actually, Sarah, I'll give you a chance to promote Gather. I believe you've been asking our J University chancellors for book recommendations for people just like Abhi. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. We have our university chancellors. We have some books of these guys who wrote them, and you can download them. So check it all out on Gather. You can find also actually mentorship on Gather. If you want to have a coach, if you want to have a mentor, jump over to Gather. We have a lot of different opportunities for you if you're more the person who wants to talk to someone, want to read something. And we also have our Gather reporters. They posted their motivational things. So it could be a podcast, it could be a video or anything like that. Or if you find something which you find is very motivating for you, just post it on Gather. That's why we created the platform, to really have this group of like-minded people.
I've got one more response for Abhi. Bizarrely, if you mentor somebody else to make them self-motivated, you yourself will increase your self-motivation. There's this wonderful thing about mentoring, that it helps the mentor as much as the mentee, even on the dimension of motivation. So I'd encourage you, if you're open to it, find somebody either younger than you or different than you to mentor. You will get as much out of it that you gave.
All right, so we have 1 minute left. I just wanted to quickly thank Asheesh and Simi for being, guys, they have insanely busy schedules, honestly, and especially towards the end of the year, everybody's trying to wrap up all the things. So we're so grateful to have you on the call, and especially also sharing some insights, Asheesh, that you have been working for a fashion magazine, right? So I'm gonna remember that. Not all your insights. No, honestly, it was such inspiring, and I'm so grateful to work with you and that you shared everything with the alumni network. And we're all together. We're all one JA. So check everything out on Gather. We will post this episode also on Gather. So for anyone who didn't have the chance to connect live, we will post it there. All the opportunities on Gather, and otherwise we will see each other back in January for the next episode, which is actually all around recruiting. So if you want to know about careers, if you want to know more about how to get into maybe a corporate and what recruiters are looking for, in January, we have an episode with incredible recruiters who give you all the insights on how to get in.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sarah. This is
everyone.
fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Simi. Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.